Hello, Namaskar, Vanakkam. I hope all of you are doing well. In this video, we are going to deal with this poem called I Remember, written by Thomas Hood. Before I start, some of you have been asking me about what kind of workbooks you should use. Now, there are many in the market. I had picked up one of them very early on before we started this course, and I was extremely disappointed with the quality. Complete waste of money. Subsequently, I found this one by Almond Books, which I thought is extremely good. This one on treasure chest, right? This contains all the class 9 poems of treasure chest. So this is something which you could look at. I found the content in this one in terms of the basic explanation, if you need it, also question and answers and MCQs, etc. Much better than any other workbook that you find in the market. Okay, so this is something which you could possibly look at if you intend to. Okay, entirely up to you. But if you do that, what you could also do is, Almond Books guys have reached out to me. This is not a promotional video, so please don't think there's any kind of paid promotion at all. But what you get is that Study with Sudhir students get a 10% off if you use Study with Sudhir without any gap. Coupon code Study with Sudhir, no space in between. Coupon code, you get an extra 10% off and also free delivery on these books. So entirely up to you if you wish to avail of that. Okay, let's get started with this particular poem. I remember. Now, this particular poem, what is rather tragic is that the poet Thomas Hood actually died at the age of 45. This poem was written in 1844 or published in 1844, 1 year before he died. And that's possibly the reason also for a rather melancholy and slightly pessimistic frame of mind that he is in while he has written this particular poem. So what kind of a poem is this one? Now, this is basically about the memories of childhood, right? About how beautiful my childhood was. So there is a sentimental romanticization of childhood in this particular poem, right? So he's revisiting the years of childhood with great attention to detail. Small things are mentioned in this particular poem. And then he contrasts it with his adult years. And he feels that the adult years are not good enough. And we know the reason why they are not good enough, right? Obviously, someone who died at the very early age. So that is the tragedy. For instance, if you see this particular box that you should always read from your book, he was born in 1799. He died in 1845. Okay, he was an English poet born in London. And this was published in 1844, as I said, 1 year before he died. So the poet addresses the gloomy and uncertain adulthood in the light of a perfect childhood. So he's contrasting it with a perfect childhood, a happy childhood, contrasting it with an unhappy adulthood. And that makes the narrative universal. In the sense, so many of us feel, "Are yaar, wo bachpan ke din bilkul mast the." You know, we felt very happy during our childhood years, growing up years. So he feels that the time passes by, leaving only memories behind, right? So I in fact had read a very beautiful quote the other day. Moments become memories. Okay, moments become memories and people become lessons. You meet someone and he or she does not give you a great vibe, does not give you a great feel. It's a lesson for you. I should not be interacting with people like him or her again, right? Or you meet someone great. It leaves a very positive impact on you. So that's a positive lesson. That's life. Moments become memories. People become lessons. That's life. I thought it was a great quote. Very realistic quote. I remember the house where I was born. Okay. So, I have written what is a poem about in the notes. So let's get directly into the explanation points. The stanza 1, he describes his home and its bedroom window. Okay, the house where I was born. I will talk about why he is repeating remember later on towards the end of the poem. The little window where the sun came peeping in at morn. Morn means morning. So he's almost personifying the sun. You know, the sun would be peeping in through the window, right? Almost personifying the sun, almost as if it is some kind of a friend, some kind of a pal that he had when he was a child. Okay, so you see, little again conveys a sense of the childhood years. peeping also has a sense of, has a tone of mischief to it, right? He never came a wink too soon. He always came at the right time. The sun was not like, one day he comes at 6 o'clock, the other day he comes at 8:30. No, he would come at the right time every day, not a wink. Wink again is something which is associated either with naughtiness, but wink is also used for, you sleep and all that. But because you get up from sleep in the morning, so it has been used in that sense also. But to basically convey that he did not come a moment too soon. Okay, so wink here has been used in the sense of keeping the time, the punctuality, but exactly the word out here that it means is that it did not come a moment too soon, nor brought too long a day. And it's not as though it would stay on forever. It meant that it would be there for a specific period of time. Okay, so that is what something which would do. It will always be there at the appointed hour in the morning. He also felt that he never felt that the day was too long, because he was possibly preoccupied with many activities, right? He never not brought too long a day. But now I feel, wish the night had borne my breath away. But now the last two lines are a complete contrast to the mood in the first part of the poem. Now he feels that the night should have taken his breath away. He's wishing for death during the night. Okay, and it presents a very sharp contrast to the very joyful mood in the first few lines of the first stanza. Okay, so you realize that there is a sad side to the poet. Okay, and you realize that he's not entirely happy and content with his present state of affairs. The last two lines also convey that he wished to pass away in the night, that he wished to die in the night, and that he never woke up to see the sun the next morning, which is some kind of a friend, some kind of a partner, some kind of an ally. It's basically his comfort zone. Okay, but he's kind of so sad that he does not wish to kind of wake up in the morning. He wishes to pass away and die in the night itself. So the night or the night time, the darkness, is basically a metaphor for the distress in his life. There is unhappiness and distress in his life. That is what the night is conveying. So that is being conveyed as opposed to sunshine, which kind of conveys the happy part of his life. I hope the first stanza is clear. Next one. I remember the roses red and white, the violets and the lily cups, those flowers made of light. So now in this next stanza, he's talking about the different kind of flowers which were possibly there in his garden. He's talking about the roses, he's talking about the violets, and he's talking about the lily cups. Okay, so he uses the definite article before each one of them. The. So that means he's talking about specific plants. It's not like one generic thing. Oh, we had a rose garden. But he's not talking about the roses, the violets, the lily cup. So he knew exactly what he was talking about. So there is a great sense of detail and specific connotations as far as this particular stanza is concerned. So violets are small flowers, either blue or purple in color. Lily cups is another word for lily flowers, which has a very large, showy kind of petal. Okay, roses, of course, So he's talking about their colors in great detail. Red and white, these flowers made of light. Now, those flowers made of light, what does this particular line convey? It means that, one, that the beautiful lilies blossomed in the daytime, right? Like many of the flowers, those flowers, lilies, roses, violets, they all blossomed in the daytime. And number two, they're also very delicate and fragile. There is a sense of beauty, and they're also very fragile, very light in terms of weight and all that. So there is a sense of lightness and fragility associated with these flowers out here. Okay. The lilacs where the robin built and where my brother set the laburnum on his birthday, the tree is living yet. Now he's talking about the focus on the red and white colors obviously conveys the sense of beauty of nature during his childhood. It's a very William Wordsworth kind of a touch out here, right? The light in this stanza is also in contrast to the night with which the first stanza ended. So from there, he has again come back to the childhood and is talking about it with a lot of nostalgia and fondness, right? So the light is in, so you see the morning light, then he moves to the darkness, then he is again talking about the light. So which are the, so whenever he talks about the light, that brings out the happy elements of his childhood. Okay, so the next two lines focus on the exact location of the flowers out here. Okay, the image of the robin bird building its nest in the lilacs conveys what? It conveys life. Again, complete contrast to the talk of death in the last two sentences of the first stanza. So please keep kind of making a note of how the poet is actually jumping from one concept to another, right? He's talking about robin building its nest. Why do you build a nest? You build a nest so that you can lay your eggs and hatch your young ones. So it kind of conveys new life, right? So new life is being spoken about in the form of robin built. And then he's talking about where my brother set the laburnum on his birthday. So he has planted a laburnum tree. Now laburnum tree has bright yellow color flowers. There's a poem called the Laburnum Tree in CBSE class 11 NCERT textbook. So he said again talking about new life. So he has kind of planted that laburnum tree. So two things out here in this particular stanza which convey new life: the laburnum tree and the nest being built by the robin bird. And the tree is living yet. Now this is important. The tree is living yet means the tree is still alive even after so many years. So the poet's brother planting a laburnum tree, one of course is a personal milestone. He's talking about a blood relation, right? And the poet associates the lilacs with the robin bird and the laburnum tree with the brother. So there is a sense of association, there is a sense of togetherness that the poet is bringing about. Now the laburnum tree is also called the golden chain tree. Now the tree is living yet, that he has ended this particular stanza with, can have two meanings. One, that the brother who planted it is perhaps no more, right? But the tree is still alive in his memory. Okay. The second interpretation can be in contrast to the poet's mood himself, because he has conveyed very pessimistic thoughts in the first stanza, right? So he is saying that the tree is living, but the poet is in a sense decaying. The poet is going down while the tree is still a living organism. So it can mean both in contrast to the brother, into the context of the brother, also in contrast to the poet's own present state of mind. So what is the stanza emphasizing? The stanza is emphasizing that past memories can actually be kept alive if you keep thinking about it. And he's thinking about it in great detail: the colors of the flowers, the robin tree, the brother, the laburnum tree, right? So he's thinking about in great amount of detail. So it brings a sense of continuity and also a sense of the preservation of the past, because the laburnum tree, which is a connection with the past, is still pretty much living. I remember where I was used to swing, the thought the air must rush as fresh to swallows on the wing. Now in the third stanza, he's talking about personal experiences and feelings. Where I used to swing means that he used to kind of play on a jhula, on a swing in the garden, and that's a regular activity for everyone, as it would have been for the poet during his childhood years. The air must rush as fresh conveys a sense of freshness. It conveys a sense of oneness with nature. Again, very William Wordsworth-like kind of poetry. You know, it conveys a sense of contact with nature because it is hitting your face. So there is a sense of experiencing the beauty of nature, the pleasant wind. Okay. It established also a bond with the swallows. Now here he's talking about swallows on the wing. Swallow is another kind of a bird which is more like a summer bird. Okay. And the use of the word feathers also reinforces that connect with the bird. So you see a lot of talk about the flowers and the birds in this particular poem. But then he's talking about my spirit flew in feathers then, that is so heavy now, and summer pools could hardly cool the fever on my brow. Now what is he saying out here? So he is saying that there is a contrast in mood. At that point in time, there used to be this pleasant wind which would come and hit the face, and feathers convey lightness. But now his current state of mind and self is actually feeling very heavy because he is sad. He's not feeling happy and joyful in his present adulthood years. Okay, so it's no longer feeling light, a word which he has used earlier, anymore. Okay, so the last two lines of this stanza conveys the poet's present condition. And summer pools could hardly cool the fever on my brow. Basically means the fever on the brow does not necessarily means bukhar. It does not necessarily mean that he's running a temperature. It's suggestive of misery and gloom. Okay, so this fever is so much that even the summer pools are unable to cool him down. So the last two lines are more about discomfort that the poet is feeling at this point in time. And this is more to do with this mental turmoil and mental conditioning. It also means that it could also mean that the summer pools, he was used to experiencing summer pools during his childhood, but they are pretty ineffective right now. During this childhood years, he may have experienced summer pools, which is why he has perhaps made a reference to it in this particular stanza. Also, the lightness of spirit is contrasted by the poet's own body and soul, which now carry the weight and burden of various troubles, which did not trouble him as a child. As a child, we are all carefree. So are you. But you must be feeling, "Arey Baba, humko to kitna padne ko hai," right? But the fact of the matter is that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you will realize that, oh, those childhood years were so wonderful, right? When you look back at it with a lot of nostalgia. That is really the beauty of childhood. When you're carefree, you know, when you do not, when everything is kind of taken care of to a large extent, right? And always enjoy your childhood, because these are experiences which will never ever come back again in your life, right? That's my own personal advice. The last stanza, I remember the fir trees dark and high. I used to think their slender tops were close against the sky. Now, in the last stanza, he's talking about fir trees. So a lot of talk about nature. Okay, fir trees are like, you know, they have pointed kind of tops. Okay, so they were kind of dark and high, and imagery that kind of conveys awe and grandeur. You know, you look up, they are tall and they look sharp. So there is a sense of awe, you know, ki wow, kitna sundar lagta hai, how beautiful it looks. And dark and high kind of conveys a sense of mystique. There's a sense of mystique. There is a sense of the unknown. You don't really know how tall are they, because as a child, you wouldn't even be able to see them very clearly, right? I used to think their slender tops were close against the sky. I used to think at that time as a child, right, that they were close against the sky, that they could almost, you know, say hello to the sky. They were so close, because from a child's point of view, they would indeed look so tall. So it shows a level of understanding that now he understands that no, they are not so close to the sky. You know, the fir trees were not so close to the sky. So he's not afraid of talking about how ignorant he was as a child, which is fine. You know, as a child, obviously you don't know everything. So there is a sense of ignorance. So he's not shy of talking about that ignorance, that as a child, I used to think something like this, right? So it was a childish ignorance, but now it is little joy to know I am farther off from heaven than I was a boy. So now he feels that he knows that the fir trees definitely don't touch the sky. He's wiser, but he also feels that he's actually far off from the heaven now than he was as a child. Because as a child, he used to think that he can see the fir trees, and the fir trees are very close to heaven. So there was a sense that, you know, he knew there was a contact with heaven. He knew the fir tree which was close to heaven. But now he knows that the fir tree is not close to heaven. So he feels actually distant from heaven as a result. So he has gained knowledge of the practical world. Okay, but that has come at the cost of innocence. Please listen to this carefully. It has come, the innocence has been lost. The innocence has been replaced by knowledge. Okay, he knows the reality now, but that innocence was so much more beautiful. There was fun in that innocence when you actually thought of a story like that, you know, that fir tree was close to heaven, right? So that kind of, you know, made him godly and closer to heaven in his childhood, but no longer so. No, I'm farther off from heaven than I was. So as a boy, he was closer to heaven. As an adult, with all the awareness that he has, with all the knowledge that he has, he's no longer close to heaven. So in the last three lines, the poet says that he has lost something spiritual in his journey towards adulthood. As a boy, he was closer to heaven. As an adult, definitely not. So there was bliss when he was a child, now no longer so. So the repeat of I remember, which I told you right at the beginning that we will talk about. Why is I remember, why is it repeated? Is repeated fondly and in a rather wistful kind of manner, in a rather not emotional but almost sentimental kind of manner. Almost there is a sigh. I remember. Sigh is something, वो क्या बोलते हैं उसको हिंदी में? हामी भरना नहीं, हामी नहीं. You almost sigh. That kind of a thing, I don't know how to explain it. So you feel like that. So I remember is said with that kind of a frame of mind, that kind of a mood. Okay, as though there is a sigh in the poet's voice as he says it before remembering the years of his childhood in every stanza. Okay, the rhyme scheme is A, B, C, B, D, E, F, E. You can make that out. The imagery is a lot related to nature, the sun, the wind, the flowers, the birds, etc., the trees. Then there are the poetic devices which have been used, which are generally not asked in ICSE. Personification about the sun that I mentioned, right? The air must rush as fresh, again personifying the air. The repetition, of course, of I remember, the imagery of the sun peeping in, then metaphor of my spirit flew in feathers, then, right? It kind of conveys the lightness of spirit that children feel, during childhood. And similarly, the air must rush as fresh. Whenever you have as or like, that is a simile. And of course, the symbolism of the laburnum tree, that it is the symbol of a shared past with his brother, right? So those are symbolism. All this is written in the notes, so you don't have to really worry too much. You can always read that. So with this, we come to the end of this poem called I Remember, I Remember. I hope it is clear. You can go through the video again if you have any doubts. And in case any doubts, please do ask in the chat box as well. Tata, bye-bye. God bless you. Be safe.